Hey, welcome to the show. Before we get started, this interview is actually from October 2022. I had the pleasure of interviewing Robin just a short time after he moved on from his very well-known role as the head of media and video at the Defiant. Robin is one of the most admirable people I've had the privilege of getting to know and working with on a number of projects. You probably know that he built the Defiant YouTube page from 0 to more than 100,000 subscribers in less than a year. And he did it completely the old-fashioned way by producing the most creative, wacky and straight-up entertaining storytelling on the world of DeFi and, of course, the other adjacent Web3 worlds. After you watch or listen to this interview, please be sure to visit BasedAF.com. And if you follow at @we_r_BasedAF on Twitter, you can watch the trailer that Robin and his team recently released for his new secretive project called BasedAF. I honestly have no idea what to expect from it, but Robin has a history of using his creative abilities to make interesting commentaries on matters often relating to the crypto space, while also using the most new and experimental tools and protocols to entertain us. And so I hope you check out BasedAF and hope you enjoy the show. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. This is DeFi Talks with DeFi Dad. I'm going to be interviewing here Robin Schmidt, who is formerly the head of video and media at the Defiant. I've known Robin for, I think, about 2 years now, and kind of always seen Robin as like an unofficial mentor. He is, I think, one of the most respected content creators and creatives in the Web3 crypto DeFi, whatever you want to call this space. And so Robin recently had mentioned that he'd been thinking a lot about the creator economy and crypto. And so I want to talk with him all about that intersection today. So on that note, Robin, welcome, man. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. You're just making me nostalgic here, remembering how this all began, like DeFi Summer 2020. You were the man. I don't think you realize quite how much you were the man making yield farming make sense. And you were one of the first people making content about it, and people were following you on Twitter and following your explorations on that. And so when we had a chance to work together on DeFi 101, I was like, there's nobody better to help kind of teach people what this is going to be. So you wrote scripts for us, and then we kind of take those scripts and turn them into something that we could shoot quickly. But yeah, man, like, you don't do yourself an injustice here. You were one of the early people to this space, and I think you've come out of this not really having changed. What happened in 21 hasn't changed you. You are still the same person that you were. You're still the same DeFi dad, and that's to your great credit, because I think a lot of people did change and saw lots of big numbers and saw lots of success, and now dealing with the repercussions of that. You're not one of them.
I appreciate that. And it's funny, like, this is part of the reason we're having this conversation. I think that, we've seen as creatives in this space, storytellers at the end of the day, we've seen the rise from everyone looking at us like we're a bunch of crazies to be interested in DeFi, thinking that, I remember in 2020, people thought it was a bubble at the time, all the way back in 2020. And it would go on to grow that much more. But one of the things we'll talk about here now is I want to cover how you think about the incentives as a creator and how Web3 can potentially improve those alignments of incentives, but also how it can also corrupt you. It hasn't solved everything. I think, we've seen that, the inclusion of tokens, NFTs, and everything else under the sun that is an application of Web3, it can lead to just the same sort of poor incentives. It can lead to bad behavior. It's just using like a newer technology. That said, though, I think we're all optimistic that there is actually a better path forward. And that also boomerangs into more of the work that you're doing with BasedAF. So Robin, do you want to kick off with a bit more about your background? Just brief history of, all that you've been involved with, from film to music videos to, to what you do today.
Well, yes, way back in the midst of time, we're talking 1999 here. A young Robin was obsessed with film, but didn't think film was a career he could actually embark on, and got an opportunity to work at a company where they had a camcorder. Oh. But the thing that made this all actually possible was there was an iMac, and an iMac back then was this big bulbous thing with a big ass on it, big round ass, beautiful thing, very poorly powered by today's standards. But the thing it could do was it could edit video. So you could plug your camcorder in via a Firewire cable, stream video out, capture it onto a hard drive, and edit it. This blew my mind, because suddenly you had access to filmmaking tools, Final Cut Pro 1. It was janky as hell. Most of it didn't work. It was a terrible piece of software, but it was on a Mac, and it had that feeling of creativity, because Macs were where creative work happened. So I was a Mac head at the time, and I turned that into a desire to be, funnily enough, a TV presenter. So I put together a TV show that I tried to sell to broadcasters, shot a pilot, dreadful, absolutely dreadful. But in the process of that, I met a guy who had a camera, and he had a bunch of snowboarding footage. And I cut together a reel out of his snowboarding footage, because I taught myself how to edit, and it was actually really good. We took it to the ski show in London, and somebody there saw it and said, "I'm making a film this winter. Do you guys want to come out and make it with me?" So it's one of those random encounters. Just showed him the film on the screen of this camera. So it's like tiny little screen. We just showed him, showed the editing, everything. It just so happened what he needed more than anything else was people who could shoot and edit. And we had that. So we then went off to Verbier in Switzerland, shot for a whole season. And that became the start of my career. So I started making ski, snowboarding, base jumping films. And I did it with this guy that had the camera footage, Joel Mishkon. And we set up a company, Chrome Productions. And then for the next 8 years, that was our company. So at 22, first startup was a video production company. Learned so much. This is a job I have not studied to do. I barely knew anything. But what's interesting about it is that we were creators in a way the creators are now. It's just there wasn't YouTube back then. There wasn't a way to monetize your passion for this stuff except by going and making crap videos and trying to persuade someone that you could make better videos if they gave you a bit of money, and then like just working your way up, and then like the budget's got a bit bigger. You could buy, have slightly better cameras that you could rent. So we just worked our way up, music videos, stream sports. Then we got into TV, and then we got into kind of commercial stuff. We did a bunch of wedding films, which horrible, like just horrible. Extreme sports was our bread and butter. And again, this is before YouTube and before GoPros. So like instead of a GoPro, you'd have this lipstick camera, thing about that long, and had a cable out the back, and then it had to have a CCD unit to process the signal, and then that signal would get spat out into a camcorder via an S-video cable. Terrible quality. And like if you pointed at the sun, you'd have this massive white bar, which is like, that's cool, bro. Cool. It's like, I think the resolution was like 280p or something. It's just insane. Like if you put that frame on like a 4K video, it'd be like this big. Utterly insane. But but stuff like that. And then if you had head cam stuff, you'd have to have a camcorder here and then a bag of sugar here on the helmet to balance it out because it was so heavy. Utterly stupid. So I worked my way through all of that. I left that company after 8 years. It's still going, amazingly enough, doing amazing work now. So it's kind of nice to see the company we started had the legs to last 25 years, which is it's just insane. And then kind of worked my way into YouTube in about 2012. So I started doing YouTube then, doing some comedy stuff, and we went viral almost instantly. It was bizarre. We just kind of tapped into something, and we did 15 videos on one character that we'd made, and then 15 videos of another thing that we'd done. And then we just stopped because I had kids, and it was just impossible to see ourselves doing that as a career because there was no money in it. And then I shot a feature film in 2016. And then I think that's basically when things got real because we had 2 kids and the stuff I was doing a lot of comedy stuff, comedy commercials. It just wasn't really consistent enough. So we made the kind of decision to move to Holland. And that's where I started doing TV commercials and started doing really soulless consumer products like an air fryer or a vacuum cleaner or a coffee machine, and like tons of money, tons of budget to do these films, but just soulless. And you'd have to get them tested by teams in Poland and Germany and Japan, and like everyone has their little piece. And by the end of it, you're just like, well, this is not a film. This is a collection of images that have no soul. And my boss at the time, we went for a trip down to Belgium, and on the way, he told me about this cryptocurrency he bought and how sort of blown up. And I started thinking about it. It's like, where am I going with things? Well, this crypto thing sounds weird and interesting. And I just fell down the rabbit hole. Turned out the cryptocurrency was ETH. And that was 2017, just early 2017. So I saw that whole bull run, and I wasn't even making content for crypto at that point, but I was just observing. And through that process, kind of got myself into investment syndicates and invested in Harmony at the seed round. So I got in touch with Harmony and said, I think you guys are interesting and have an interesting story. I'd love to tell it. And I kept in contact with them for 12 months and then had an opportunity to go to San Francisco. So I went to meet them and got on really well with them. Just really kind of found myself fascinated by the way they were set up in Silicon Valley, the conversations they would have, the enthusiasm they had for the technology and the way they were building it in this hacker house. Just like, this is wild. This is the inception of something really that feels massive, but it's just a bunch of people in a house building it. And the long and the short of it was they ended up offering me a job as their creative director, which I took as this massive left turn in my career just to kind of figure out a new path. And that ended up putting me in contact with Camilla. And then we did the Defiant video channel together, because I was trying to get Harmony to have a footprint in DeFi, because we could see DeFi was going to be huge, but Harmony was still kind of struggling through early stages of mainnet. And I wanted us to have a story to tell about DeFi. So I thought, let's partner up with someone. I reached out to Ryan Sean Adams at Bankless, sent him one email. I said, basically, I'm at Harmony, but I would really love to talk to you guys about doing video. And he wrote me back and said, oh yeah, video, that could be interesting. And I said, well, yeah, sure, let's set up a meeting. Never heard back from him. Got ghosted by Ryan. So so that was that. And I had this connection with Camilla, and Camilla didn't ghost me. So Camilla, yeah, but I mean, like,
what a great story.
I mean, how different things could have been if Ryan hadn't ghosted me. I don't know if he remembers that, but yeah.
I'm gonna totally cut that clip so that to share this later. That's fantastic. I
probably
you made a big mistake there, buddy.
I probably still have the email as well. Yeah, I know, it's weird, right? But I mean, to be honest with you, my style of making videos wouldn't fit with Bankless at all. It would have been a very different show. And I think the interesting thing is I became the face of what is the Defiant video. And Ryan and David are very much the face of that. So would I be in competition with them? Would it have been a different thing? I don't know. But anyway, it's probably better for the best that it didn't work out that way. And so after a while of doing this sort of combined co-production thing, Camilla basically said, listen, I'm raising money. And if we get the funds together, I'd love you to come and be the head of video and multimedia for this new team. So I said, yes. And then 2 years later, I left.
Which is
and in between we made
in crypto.
Yeah,
I know crypto. That's like 2 decades. You know, to be fair, like I love my team at Fourth Revolution Capital, and I'm like, I've been with the team for about almost 1.5 years, and I was with Zapper for a year, with Consensus for 2 years. It's not a reflection of anything in my experience. It's just things move quickly and folks move around. So yeah, but it's exciting for what's next then.
Yeah, it is. And looking back on my time at the Defiant and also at Harmony as well, like the exposure to ideas at the very highest level, the opportunity to talk to stakeholders, to developers, to people who are building stuff, but people who are also in contact with regulators, talking to NFT projects. I got a chance to speak to everybody. And that was really, really valuable. because what you have in that privileged position of being an interviewer is you just have a ringside seat to the best ideas, and not all of them are good, but some of them might be ahead of their time, some of them might be behind their time, but you have the opportunity to do that because you've built an audience. And the weird thing about the Defiant is that we got it up to kind of 117,000 subscribers, and that was through a very pumpy time as well. So it's probably not a fair reflection of the median for all of that, but at the same time, it was, with us and Bankless, we were kind of the only two places where you get this particular type of content. And then a whole bunch of other content creators grew up around it as well. But we had that audience, and we had enough prestige in the brand to get good people and have a really good conversation with them. And there were so many memorable moments. But also we got, I had to, in our kind of highest points of output, we were doing 6 videos a week. We were doing a show with Real Vision, but that was always like, you had to be on point for the Real Vision show. We just had to research a lot and get in the weeds with a lot of protocols and just expose myself, particularly doing tutorials and things, which honestly, I hate doing tutorials. It's not my happy place, but forced me to go in deep, understand a protocol, understand how it works. And that was always really good fun because you could sometimes see that they weren't going to work. But also, I mean, I'm pretty optimistic in everything that I do. And like, I just got to see some really funky, quirky stuff. And that was sort of the best of DeFi, just these weird experiments to see where they would go.
Yeah, I know with tutorials, it can be a little bit overwhelming at first when you're starting to dig into something new. But then as you dig further, once you figure it out, you actually, if anything, start to notice these trends across all these different protocols and applications. And I think something for me that has been a little bit of a letdown in the past year is just doesn't feel like there's been really much new. It's always like a regurgitated form of something that already exists with a slight tweak. Now, I think the bear market is for more innovative stuff to start to get created for the first time, which will hopefully then drive, new applications, a richer sort of application ecosystem that will be interesting for the next, new set of Web3 DeFi users. But no doubt we've been in somewhat of a repetitive cycle. One thing I want to go back to before we talk specifically about the creator economy is, so when you were shifting gears to go work at Harmony, you mentioned having kids. I also remember this pivot, having kids. At the time I actually had one very young kid. I think my son was like 1 year old. And it's hard. It's really hard because even back then you knew how high risk the crypto space looked, but yet you made the leap as well. Do you recall like any of the thinking that you went through that told you, this is the right move, high risk, but for some reason I know that this is the right path for me?
Oh yeah, for sure. I was working at a production company, like I said, basically working as a studio director. So I would shoot the projects they would put in front of me. And like I said, on paper, they looked amazing, but it was just grinding me down, soul destroying me. Because I would turn up and I would do the best job that I possibly could, but like there was just nothing creative about it. You're just filling in boxes on a sheet going, we need this shot, we need this shot, we need this shot, we need this shot for Poland, we need this shot for France, we need this shot, And after a while, that just becomes horrible, at least for me. For some people, I think there would be plenty of joy to be found from that. But I've been doing this job for a long time, and the things that I enjoy are sort of pushing myself and testing myself to see creatively what I can come up with. And I think that was probably present in the Defiant videos, particularly the Defiant Weekly, where we just come up with some insane, stupid idea. That wasn't because we are insane and stupid. It's because that's what made it fun. And so I was at this place where I'd lost that. And the thing that saved me, I mean, this is ridiculous, but I started making what I called luxury GIFs. And this was 2018. I would just make the most insanely intricate, insanely high level kind of motion captured, tracked faces, all this kind of stuff. GIFs, and I have a whole channel with these things. And I would just challenge myself on the way into work on the train to just come up with an idea and execute it as a GIF. And that was just the thing that kept me creatively satisfied, which is insane thinking about what I do now. But that was the thing that kind of saved me. And it was all for crypto stuff. So I was just making crypto GIFs, capturing an idea and then turning into something that was just absurdly high value. And like the GIFs are funny when they're janky and they don't work properly. And like the faces just jump about. I wasn't doing that. I was doing like precision visual effects kind of stuff. Cause I mean, my background's editing and filming and like I do everything. So I was just having fun. And then like, I just felt like it was time to do something different. And the Harmony, as much as it was a risk, was going to be a pretty significant salary bump. And it was an opportunity to work in crypto, but in a relatively safe way, with a proper salary, proper contract. And it just felt like that was the right move. It was hard to sell it to the family at the time, but as it's turned out, that was definitely the 100% the right move. And then it kind of carried on through to understanding the value I could provide to Harmony was making videos, and then just kind of making the videos we wanted to make, making a bit of a name for ourselves through, we were in the middle of the pandemic, we were just stuck inside. Life was tough. But we just kept hustling and putting videos out with, 500 views, 600 views, but just kept doing it. And then the DeFi summer thing hit. We just started making videos the way DeFi felt and not necessarily the way it was. So not the Bloomberg approach, but like, all right, this is bananas. So when Curve launches, I'm going to get hit in the face with the banana a lot. And then, the Curve banana theory.
I remember that video.
Told that story. So that became the template for it. Just people would expect wacky stuff from us. And it became a bit of a cult thing. And then like 2021 happened, and then everything expanded, and then your audience gets bigger. Like you talk about Terra, you talk about UST, and at the time it was really fun, really exciting. Anchor was exciting, but also it made sense coming from DeFi Summer. That's what people forget. Like DeFi Summer completely changed our notions of what any of this stuff could be. Yield farming, like the YFU token. It completely changed the game, and Terra came off the back of that.
So I guess like, what have you been ruminating on when you talk about this intersection of crypto and the creator economy? I kind of want to paint a picture of like what came before us before crypto, and then, what's the state of that creator economy today, but like, what problems ultimately, could be solved by some of this new tooling. So anyways, we could start with the basics though, of like, how do you even just define that creator economy and the state of it?
Well, the creator economy is the business is around creators, and it's also the infrastructure and tools that companies provide to make that move better, be easier to manage. Because being a creator is a very volatile business. Like the ad revenue driven side of things is extremely volatile, and trying to even that out throughout a year, particularly when you have to hire staff, you have overheads and that kind of thing, it's pretty difficult to manage. And so banks won't touch you. There's no infrastructure in place for that because you are other and different. If you're a freelancer, for instance, banking services are just a lot tougher. Getting a mortgage is tougher. Being a creator, it's even tougher because, as we know, like, it's just incredibly volatile. You might be popular today, you might not be popular tomorrow. So what has happened is that brands have realized that the relationships that creators have with their audience, particularly at scale, are immensely valuable and becoming increasingly valuable, and a thing that they need to tap into. And it's no longer just a case of pay the influencer, they will put out a message for you, job done. No, you have to really, really think about partnerships. And creators are realizing they have a lot more power. And so the ones that are any good are able to manage that process and have better brand integrations. And all of that comes with new kind of perils and other problems, but essentially the creator economy is that. So let's say you have a creator that's particularly good at beauty and makeup. They might launch their own line of nails, for instance, or Emma Chamberlain has launched coffee, Mr. Beast has launched burgers and snackables. So that, you know, there's these consumer products that these creators are putting out, and that's creating jobs, it's creating revenue, that's part of the economy. And then there's other services out there that enable them to make views go further, be seen by more people. Translation services, so you can get your video translated for a Brazilian audience, for instance. That's all feeding into the creator economy as well. So that it's estimated around 100 billion. I have no idea how that estimate has been put together. It's a pretty broad estimate, and I think it's probably skewed for one simple reason, which was, I don't know if you remember, but there was this disease called COVID, and it was like it forced everyone indoors, and then they all became creators. Do you remember that? So there was this boom in the creator economy when everyone was creating, and that's how we received the world. That stopped. So a lot of the things that sprang up to cater to that in this very strange bubble are now struggling because the volume has dropped off. And doesn't that sound familiar? If you come from crypto and Web3, that sounds very familiar. It doesn't necessarily mean that the creator economy is dead. Far from it. But if you're looking at an ad-based revenue system and looking at the macroeconomic conditions, the two things do not add up. So as much as I'm positive about the creator economy and the relationships between creators and brands, and where there could be some really interesting opportunities there, I think it depends on the niche you're in and the sector you're in. And also, you just need to be a really good creator. That's another thing that's really exciting about this space, is that YouTube and Netflix particularly has changed the game. YouTube has also changed the game. And what you're seeing now is this new kind of class of content consumer that is simply bypassing TV completely. It just doesn't spend any time there. And also never had a Facebook account. So it doesn't have that social media grooming that we had, but just consumes everything in a very different way. What has happened is that everyone's copied Mr. Beast. So they're going, okay, here's a suitcase full of cash, and I'm just going to shout at you for the next 10 minutes so you don't click away. And that's going to be how guys subscribe. We're going to throw $1 million into the ocean and watch sharks eat it. And then we're going to cut out the sharks and turn them into money steaks. Amazing. So, you know, that just gets exhausting after a while. Unless you've got ADHD or over sucranated or whatever the word is, that's going to be really hard to watch. There is a new trend coming where people are looking for more human connections with people who aren't just copying everybody else. It's funny how many similarities there are between YouTube and like everything in crypto. Like everyone just forks the greatest idea or the latest idea and does subpar copies of it until the idea is exhausted. But there's this move towards more kind of empathy with creators and also better storytelling. And this is like, come to papa. It's time. So I'm very excited about that. So that's kind of the overview where we're at with, at least on YouTube. Like I can't speak to OnlyFans and Instagram. Like I mentioned OnlyFans because it's, of all the platforms, it's probably the one with the fairest relationship with its creators, and also the one where there's just a staggering amount of money being made by the top creators. It blows my mind. Absolutely blows my mind. There's one in particular called Amaranth, who is not far off what Mr. Beast is doing. And this is an OnlyFans creator. How? It's
Wow.
insane.
At least in the world that I grew up in, that's how we thought about artists. There was this like meme of like the starving artists. You fast forward to today, for someone who has a YouTube channel, they could be making, you know, massive amounts of money if they've got hundreds of thousands or millions of subscribers. You know, someone like Mr. Beast has figured out seemingly how to monetize literally everything about what he does. And so, yeah, it feels like you have these same cycles of behavior, but you've got new and shiny toys. The new and shiny toy over the last 10 years was YouTube and Instagram and every other sort of social media platform. Now we have it started to incorporate some of this Web3 tooling, which in the case of NFTs, that's, that was really what all of our attention was on in 2021.
YouTube's an interesting one because they're sort of slowly becoming super powerful again. And they haven't done it overnight, and they've traditionally not been the best communicators with their creator community, but like you can see that they're slowly trying to pull creators away from TikTok and from Twitch in a very kind of slow way, and they're doing it through monetization, through AdSense. So, if you think about being a creator, what your job is to really to get the most clicks on a video you possibly can, because clicks mean money. And so, you're fighting for attention, so make the most attention grabbing content you can. And there's literally a playbook for how you do it. It's about great thumbnail. That gives you the click-through rate, as long as you have a good thumbnail, title, and concept, which is not easy, by the way. And then you basically have to employ extravagantly tailored retention tactics. So you look at your retention graph, you're like, okay, people drop off in the first 20 seconds because they always do. How do you keep them there? There's a famous Logan Paul video where he's talking about how he bought the most expensive Pokemon card in the world. He also has probably one of the most talented editors on YouTube in the world. So that combination, big story, big personality, great story, and then a great editor. And they held a retention rate of like 75% or something. So 75% of people who watched that video stayed on until the end. That is insane. That's insane. That's really insane. Because people arrive in your video with no context and they're looking for an excuse to leave. So you've got to keep them there. So, but to be honest with you, figuring out how to give people the sniff of an idea or the sniff of something that's coming and then hold them there, that's just storytelling. And it's just that now everything's compressed. You have to, you have to be sneakier with it. You have to kind of harness it. But you can plot the story that you want to tell. None of that has to do anything with what we did at the Defiant. We never thought that way because we were doing educational content. We were doing all these other kinds of things. But I love that stuff. I love the challenge of keeping people hooked on something that you've come up with for this period of time. Like you were asking me, like, where does Web3 fit into all of this? Why Web3's done a really crappy job of understanding the creator economy, because we basically said NFTs were the answer. But if NFTs weren't the answer, then it's like a new decentralized version of YouTube. That's the answer. Or a decentralized version of Instagram. But it's not the answer. Like, people are not leaving those platforms because those platforms are, on the whole, they're the best thing that creators have. So in order to make something that's better than that, it just needs to be way better. And it just isn't. Like, all the things that YouTube has, you can't fight on that hill. Like, TikTok has done something different and amazing, but YouTube didn't die because of TikTok. There are more creators than there have ever been. Kids want to be creators, so it succeeded in grooming a whole new generation. The issue is that NFTs are amazing for building communities. They're amazing at harnessing very simple visuals and hooking people into a kind of sense of belonging to a community in a way that shitcoins simply cannot. Because shitcoins cluster around trading activity, whereas NFTs cluster around, notionally, the idea that you jam or jive with a particular piece of art and the community around that. And that's fairly fleeting most of the time. In the case of Bored Ape Yacht Club, what you're buying into is perceived success. And there's no doubt that Yuga has been extremely successful. So you're buying a piece of the Yuga success story. But other projects have a different vibe. And that's fantastic. Like Pudgy Penguins, it's all about like good vibes. And it's geared towards kids. They're one of the few projects that does that. CloneX is a different thing. It's about streetwear, it's about fashion, and it's about this emerging avatar-driven, future-driven content creation kind of landscape. And they're brilliant at it. But like, the issue for me is, like, as soon as you get into this thing, which we were talking about, of incentives, like, how do you incentivize people? The first answer is a token. And I think most projects, like 99% of projects, the moment you add a token, you are fucked. It's game over. It may not happen straight away, but like the moment you add a token, you're fucked. So when we looked at Bankless launching a token, the Defiant looked at making a token because you were part of that conversation. We never did. And there's like a really simple reason why it's a bad idea. And that's because if you have a token, notionally, visibly or invisibly, your performance, your success will track that token, whether you like it or not. And you have no control over that. And therefore, at some point, the temptation will be to force value into that token because that's how people see you. And that's just not the right way. That is not where your attention should be. So what we're talking about here is the imbalance of the creator economy. Because as you rightly said, what Mr. Beast has become really good at is monetizing. And what creators are expected to do and groomed to do, I would say, because all of them consume the same kind of tutorial content about how to grow on YouTube and how to be a successful creator. Like you have your primary monetization stream, your secondary, and your tertiary. So you've got like a balance of these things, but all of them revolve around doing one thing, and that's extracting maximum value from your audience. So you have this thing, build an audience, monetize that audience. But where is this going wrong? Like the audience gets fucked. That's basically what's happening here. Web3 should, could, might, maybe make it possible for the audience not to get fucked. That's it. And I don't think anybody has even thought about it that way, because all they see is, oh, creators get a bad deal on YouTube. Creators get a bad deal on Instagram. Creators are doing just fine. If you're a talented creator and you put the time in, you're going to be fine, because brands are falling over themselves to be part of your story. So tell a good story, do the time, do the work. It will happen for you. The people are getting screwed here. Oh yeah, guys, like and subscribe. Oh yeah, here's my merch. Oh yeah, here's my NFT drop. Audiences get fucked. So if we're going to come up with a better way for the creator economy, we have to do what I call the third pillar, because we need to give it a fancy name. Because if we are going to write a white paper about this, it needs to have like the third pillar, my vision, the creator economy. So yeah, build an audience, monetize that audience. Third pillar, share the spoils. Now this is like, oh, share the spoils, but why would I do that with these monkeys that watch my content? Well, have a think about it. Why would you want to share this hard-earned cash? You've got your mansion, you're doing this walk around video of your big house. Like, because people fall away. And the way the world is going, we want a greater sense of connection with the creators. And it's not top down. Like, you need that audience as much as they need you. And why do they really need you? I don't know. And I think there just needs to be a lot more kind of precious about that relationship, and not just seek to extract value from it. So for me, then the question is, okay, so how are you going to share the spoils? What are the spoils? And like the Web3 answer is, bro, add a token. Like, when's your token coming out? No token, bro. There is no token. So the trick, and it comes back to DeFi, the trick is to take the things that worked from 2020, from yield farming, and apply them to YouTube. And I wish I could say more than that, but if you think about YouTube as a yield farm, then stuff gets really interesting. And that is as far as I'm willing to go in that particular conversation. But it's all my thinking right now is attempting to bring I guess it's real yield, right? Where does the real yield come from if you're a creator? And then where does that go, and how can you use it to your advantage to incentivize the community to do the thing that you need them to do, which is YouTube wants to see that people watch your video. They want to see that they're retained by your video, because then it will go, oh, lots of people are watching this and they're watching through to the end. Damn, this must be a good video. Let's serve it up to more people. That's the only thing I need my community to do, to watch a video And it's a really low lift because they can press play and walk away if they want to. Just let it go to the end. Maybe like, but that one thing, our retention, I want to be at like 90% retention in the first 4 hours of a video. And if I can do that, I can go viral. And if I can go viral, then I can scale fast. And if I can scale fast, I can build pillar 3. And building pillar 3 is the only thing that matters. So that's it. And that is, honestly, that's the reason why I want to do BasedAF, because the kinds of stories that I want to tell and the way I want to tell them are geared to meet the demands of, you know, what people expect from top creators. Because I think we can make a video every bit as good as a Mr. Beast or a Logan Paul. That bit, I don't have any struggle with. Maybe 2 years ago, before I started putting my face on camera, I might have struggled with that. But now I'm like, I'm fine. I can do this. We need to make great videos. We need to make ideas that you just have to watch. That's kind of baked into the name, BasedAF. You kind of know what sort of videos you might be watching. But we also have to figure this thing out and scale it up really fast. So we have to be pitchy. We have to be kind of aiming for the very top echelons of this business, and then use all the tactics that we can to keep people viewing and to bust through the algorithm. But again, all of this is fairly scientific and fairly straightforward to do. And you just got to keep doing it video after video. But you know, the recipe is not secret. It's just very hard to maintain over a long period of time. But again, what did we do the last 2 years? 6 videos a week, again and again and again. We can do it. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. But yes, that YouTube is a yield farm, and then go from there.
So one thing I think that you've properly highlighted is the journey is not supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be hard. Life is not supposed to be, you know, one milestone after another without any sort of effort, time, and essentially practice. I think at the end of the day, that craft of creating 6 videos in a week or 1 video, whatever it is, whether it's you creating an editorialized video or it being more of an interview, it's all practice. And you have truthfully been practicing this now for, you know, let's say 20 years, and more specifically being in front of the camera nonstop for the last several years since you've been in crypto. And it's funny, there was an interview that you did right sometime near the end of your tenure here at the Defiant. It was a more recent video. I remember you were interviewing someone who owned a Bored Ape. They work in LA.
Yeah.
They had like the Bored Ape over their face.
Yeah.
His suggestion was that he doing the typical crypto thing, looking at all of the upside on the opportunity to use NFTs and tokens, but not talking about any of the drawbacks. He said something to the effect of NFTs as profile pictures democratize your ability to be yourself, get in front of the camera, tell a story, not have to worry about the insecurities of your looks. And it was a kind of a nice story he was telling, but here's where I disagree. It was capped off with, because anybody can do this. Anyone can get in front of a camera and be just as talented. There is no, the suggestion was that essentially it was looks that was driving the success of a lot of folks. And I totally disagree with that. And I think that YouTube, truthfully, did more already to democratize the ability to make content, share it, than what Web3 has already done. Or even like, you know, as impressive as TikTok is, I am absolutely blown away by what TikTok has enabled. But YouTube seems to still be where great storytelling lives. And that's going to be the challenge for Web3 is the end product. Let's say like right now there's a lookalike product to YouTube called LensTube. It uses some new Web3 building blocks like Lens Protocol, which basically means I own my followers and I can like port those followers with me if I go anywhere that uses the Lens Protocol. That said, LensTube, although it looks a lot like YouTube, it's going to take a very long time to create deep content liquidity so that folks can get on there and say, everything I need is here. Great storytelling lives on LensTube. And it looks, again, exactly like YouTube. But the truth is, there's going to have to be that much hard work. There's going to have to be incentives that drive creators over. It can't just be, here's this thing, and BT dubs, it might have a token. We don't know this yet, but my assumption is LensTube will eventually have a token. I decided to start making videos on there because I don't have a distaste in my mouth for YouTube, but I have felt that there is a better way forward, and I'm, pretty often an early adopter of whatever Web3 DeFi applications are out there. So it was kind of a part of like dog fooding what's available, and I've sort of fallen in love with using it. But that said, I still have more subscribers on YouTube. I get more views, I get more exposure. And so anyways, just kind of like summing up that this all comes back to great storytelling, lots and lots of hard work, lots of practice. I am grateful for what content has done for my career over the last few years, but to be, completely transparent, I think I've also lived through the ups and downs as a creator like anyone. I saw my YouTube surging to I think I had 200,000 or 300,000 views back in 2020. And I decided that, I remember at the time that I distinctly was fearful of YouTube banning me for doing crypto content at some point and being locked out, and that being my one source of income. And given I had a family, having the opportunity to go work at Zapper was just an obvious layup for me. I was like, I can do both, but there's a hedge here against if something goes wrong and YouTube kicks me out. With LensTube, I'd like to think if LensTube existed back then, I'm not sure that I would have followed that path. There might have been an opportunity to say, this is more censorship resistant or less likely to kick me out. But anyways.
Yeah, it's the algorithm that's the problem, but it's also the algorithm that is the game. And you talk to any kind of YouTuber that's had a period of, a career that longer than, a year or two, and it does kind of even out. You have these ups and downs, but also you have to pick a niche in which there's a relative amount of stability. So Linus Tech Tips, tech is always changing. There's always a story. And MKBHT is the same thing. There's always a story. He's been going, it was the creator of the decade, and he doesn't need to be interesting. The tech needs to be interesting. And there's always a new phone. There's always a new thing. So for him, that's relatively stable. If you're a personality YouTuber and your personality is to be big and brash and loud, at some point you burn out because it's inevitable. I mean, I definitely burn out on DeFi content. There became a point where I could not physically talk about another hack or another DEX with the same enthusiasm again, because I've just seen it over and over and over. And I can't fork my enthusiasm and just port it onto Avalanche, unfortunately. I wish I could, because then it would be straightforward. So when you reach those points, you have to do one or two things. You either have to hire new people and keep the team fresh and then bounce off their ideas and bounce off their energy, or you have to wave the white flag and say, enough is enough, time to do something different. The solution I came to was, whatever I do next, it has to be non-crypto, in the sense that it has to have enough breadth in the subject matter that it can be about things that crypto isn't about. And obviously not abandoning that space, because this is where I come from. This is where my audience is at. When I went to NFT NYC, I was staggered about how many people knew my face and came up and said hello. I was like, oh, damn, maybe I'm not so stupid. Maybe there is an audience there that wants to come and see me do something crazy next. But for me, going through this cycle, seeing all of that hard work evaporate, and then having to be in a position where you're having to defend and apologize for the space that you're in, fighting all of this kind of regulatory negativity, even though the thing that you fell in love with, the stuff that you love, hasn't changed, doesn't change, it remains the same. It's just not a battle I want to fight. So for me, the most logical next step was to look for something which was had a long tail into the future, had enough kind of breadth in it to keep things interesting so we could pivot to things that maybe crypto, maybe non-crypto, but also was a big enough story that it would really capture a large audience so I could build this pillar 3 thing, because my pillar 3 doesn't work at a small scale. It works at a large scale. So, so that for me was the metaverse, and this idea of the future of the internet, all of that stuff. And the great thing is I don't have to be right about the metaverse. All we have to do is write about the metaverse, because the content speaks for itself. And of course, we have a built-in pantomime supervillain, which is Mark Zuckerberg. So there's always something to talk about. Actually, right now, it's MetaConnect. So there's a big kind of meta conference going on. I'm doing this instead. That's how much I'm dedicated to the cause. But yeah, all sorts of interesting things. So when we talk about BasedAF, which is my new venture, we will be the morons of the metaverse trying desperately to make sense of it and see where it goes.
Creators are still thinking in the context of Web 2. And so everything that you've done, anyone else, that's been a creator exploring how to use these new tools, they're thinking about, how can I do what I was doing in Web 2 the same, if not better? But the truth is yeah, we're setting up for a new future where I think it's very likely that someone who is a Web3 creator in the future will more likely identify with actually teaching that content in, let's say, like a metaverse platform. Like there will be universities that I think are native to the metaverse. There will be, creators who, they could be an AI, they could be a human being, but regardless, content creation will originate there. And that's really, I think, to me, that's the lasting legacy of DeFi, NFTs, all this stuff. It's setting us up for, we need that finance aspect handled. We need basically the idea of, how do we exchange value that is scarce?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the metaverse has this wasteland quality to it. There's no rules in any of it yet. And it can be pretty much anything you want. People, when I talk about the metaverse, they say, well, can you define it for us? I'm like, no, I cannot. And that feels like I should know. But the more I investigate it, the less obvious it becomes what it is. And it could be through VR, it could be through AR, it could be through, I spend a lot of time in Zwift. But what I think is really important is that the perception we have of the metaverse is dehumanizing. And it's mainly dehumanizing because of Facebook and Zuck. But that's not the vision he has for it. He may be very clumsy in expressing it, but there's a lot of things where I listen to what he has to say. I'm like, that actually resonates with me much more than some of the Web3 metaverse conversations I've seen. But that's the kind of broad vision of it. But nonetheless, I just think there's this wave of creativity coming that's going to be connected to this space. And it's just really underserved for content. It's either guys, VCs going, this is this $20 trillion opportunity and it's going to be the most amazing thing in the world and it's going to be the future of the internet. Or it's like, hey, buy this land, it's going to be 1,000x by March. And you're like, well, what's in the middle? Like, where's the fun stuff? So, what we're trying to do is set up a style of content that is willing to poke fun at it, but also willing to explore the very extremes of what it is. Because I think ultimately the issue I have is whenever I'm connected to that space through VR for whatever reason or any other things, the thing that my brain is telling me is this is disconnecting me from my humanity. But what I keep discovering more and more is it's actually reinforcing connections to my humanity that I had abandoned. And that's bizarre and weird, but that's the message I want to carry through what we're doing, is that actually quite the opposite can be possible if you got an open mind.
Well, why do you think the creator economy attracts so many grifters?
Oh, the notorious influencers. Well, you see them like the crypto bros and the F boys and all these kind of things. Like there's a certain type of human that is just an extraction maximalist that just likes to kind of rape and pillage and then move on. And they'll just go where the marks are cheap and the marks are easy. And that's it seems to be expressing itself on social media and through influencers and these kind of things, but you can spot them a mile off. And like, if people get burned, they get burned. You learn and move on. I don't honestly know. I don't think it's necessarily reflecting anything that wasn't there before. It's just now it's more visible. That's it. There's always been grifters.
One thing before we go, Robin, do you have any optimism about these new Web3 media platforms? Like I mentioned LensTube earlier, basically, again, recreating a likeness to Web2 social media, or any sort of, platform that allows creators to thrive on it, something like OnlyFans, recreated, but with like crypto payments. Is that an optimistic future, or are we just in the early days of shoehorning these together?
For me, where this goes is YouTube moves in that direction. Because we know that Susan Wojcicki, I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly, but she's into NFTs and she's into trying to figure out how to build that into what YouTube is doing. A transparent social graph definitely would be interesting, but like, is YouTube going to go there? Maybe there's a YouTube decentralized flavor. I just feel that everything that Lens, for instance, is doing, it ends up being ported over to a bigger platform in some way. And whether that's enough, I don't know. But like the scale, the network effects, I don't see them playing out. I've seen this scenario happen so many times, and it's just hard to get the volume of the users. Like you said, the content liquidity is just not there.
Yeah, well, we'll see if the Aave community, Stani in particular, can kind of translate that momentum of early adopters over. It definitely feels like one of the best shots we have, but yeah, there's high risk, high reward there. You're building in the face of some behemoth incumbents that you've got to overcome. Before you go then, just a reminder to everyone, they can follow you and your new team at BasedAF here on Twitter. They can learn more here at based-af.com.
You won't have much.
Yeah,
holding page, but still, it's something.
Yeah, hopefully by the time hopefully by the time you listen to this or watch this in the future, so it's out with the coming product. But hey, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it. We went way over, no surprise there, and just really excited for what's next.